Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Island. We're back continuing our Dark Elf faction focus, now looking at the rare units. As before, we're doing this for Warhammer The Old World, taking a look at the 8th edition army list and book, looking at the rules and flavour of each unit to see how that might influence the rules, which we know are coming for Dark Elves in Warhammer The Old World, despite them being legendary status. And yes, I know they won't be updated, at least in the first edition. However, rules are coming, and I thought it would be interesting to see how these units might look in Warhammer The Old World. So without further ado, let's move on to the rare units, the final category of the army roster. So first up, Doomfire Warlocks. Above average movement and attacks. They only get a hand weapon and come in a unit size of 5. They only get a champion. There's no standard bearer or musician in this unit. And despite the normal rules that you get with most Dark Elf units, they do have Cursed Coven, which makes the unit a level 2 wizard, which knows Soul Blight and Doombolt. Both are useful spells. And you do get +1 to cast for each rank of 5 to a maximum of 3, though you'd rarely see them in that bigger unit. Miscast is D3 wounds, however, with no save, rather than rolling on the miscast table. Fast Cavalry, which means they get Vanguard deployment, the free reform, fire and march, and so on. They do get poisoned attacks, which auto-wound on 6s, but the big one being Prey of the Dark Prince, and this is key because they get a 4+ ward save, except against Slaaneshi demons or models with Mark of Slaanesh. It made them surprisingly durable with that 4+ ward save on a fast-moving cavalry unit that is also casting spells. It's not terrible in combat, and they are 5 points cheaper than a Cold One Knight. So it wasn't unusual to see a unit of 10 for that extra +1 to cast rank, or 2 units of 5 roaming around the flanks. I think the main reason that Dark Elf players didn't use them was more an aesthetic one, and the theming in that they're a Slaaneshi cult unit, as opposed to, some people just wanted that sort of traditional Dark Elf army roster, whereas these were a slightly different flavour. So I think that was more the reason, as opposed to their capability on the battlefield, which I think was pretty substantial. Moving on, we've got the Blood Rack Medusa, and it's got above average move but very low leadership, no equipment, and a unit size of 1. Now it's got some pretty good ranged rules, though limited in terms of that range. The first one was you got Avert Your Gaze, which is you must pass initiative test or take a strength 4 killing blow magical hit with no armor save. Then you also had a 12-inch magical shooting attack. Now that was multiple shots 4, so 4 shots at strength 4 with killing blow, and you roll to wound against the initiative and not toughness, and no armor save allowed. I think one of the issues with that, a lot of the models that have multiple wounds, unless they're kind of some monstrous infantry thing, characters that have those multiple wounds where you get the benefit of killing blow, generally have pretty reasonable initiative, so that could be a problem. They also cause fear, and they do have frenzy for that +1 attack. To be honest, they were rarely seen. That lack of durability, very low leadership, meant that if they were taken, they would normally be part of a Blood Rack shrine, then out on their own. And I think the main reason that you saw people having Blood Rack Medusas is because they were building the Cauldron of Blood, which is the dual kit, meaning that you could build the Blood Rack Medusa on its own on a base, as opposed to specifically going for that unit on the battlefield. Next up then is the Blood Rack Shrine. This is different, and this is where I think if you were going to see a Blood Rack Medusa, this is how it would be taken typically. Certainly how I would have taken mine, though I didn't tend to use it so much. Above average toughness, you do get spear, size, and it is a chariot with a 6+ save, so size giving you that d6 +1 impact hits. Right, you do have a number of abilities on top of the basic ones. We've got the standard ones we just saw for the Blood Rack Medusa, the Avert Your Gaze and the shooting attack. It also comes with an Aura of Agony, which is +1 leadership, to all Dark Elves within 6 inches, and -1 leadership to all enemy units within 6 inches. It is a large target, though it doesn't get the cover modifiers, and it has a magic resistance 1, which basically means you get a 6+ ward save against magic. Basically, 1 means you add 1 to a ward save. It doesn't have a ward save, so you get a 6+ against magic. It does cause terror, which makes it immune to psychology, cause fear, and charge units take a panic test. And it has a will of the gods, which means it's a chariot, but it doesn't have anything pulling it. And it can, which basically means it can join units, which is if you're going to run it, probably how you'd want to run it, joining a unit of witch elves or other unit of infantry. I think the one thing with this is when you compare this with a Cauldron of Blood, which was the dual kit, the Cauldron of Blood I think tended to be more popular. They both can join units, but the bonuses that the Cauldron of Blood gives you is you get a bonus to the rolling to wound, you get a bonus to the ward save to witch elves, so it made it a bit more useful for a similar points cost than that leadership ability that the Blood Rack gave you. Couple that with the fact that rare units have a maximum of 25% points, and the fact there are better choices. And the Blood Rack is the most expensive unit. The Blood Rack Shrine is the most expensive unit in the roster, not including fully equipped Dreadlords and so on. Meant that it just wasn't taken as much, and that you'd normally see people with a Cauldron of Blood if they were going to take such a unit. Moving on is the Charybdis. Now, as a model, I really like this. This is a dual kit with the War Hydra. To me, this really does have that great sea monster vibe. That's exactly what it is. It is a sea monster, essentially brought up by the Black Arcs, and I think it looks great. It's got average stats, except its strength is pretty good and low movement, similar to the War Hydra. No equipment, and the unit size is 1. Now, in terms of special rules, you've got the Abyssal Howl, which is enemy units in base contact must re-roll successful leadership tests. A bit situational. If you've got somebody who's rolling against high leadership with no modifiers, then they'll probably pass it again. But in a clutch one where somebody rolls this amazing roll and they pass a leadership test they really shouldn't, they've now got to do the same again, and the chance of that a lot lower. So situational, but could be clutch in certain situations. Feast of Bones. If you put all the attacks against the same target and all of those attacks hit, then the enemy model suffers an additional D6 strength 7 hits, which is pretty nice. Large target doesn't get its cover modifier, and like the War Hydra does have scaly skin of 4+ save. Causes terror, and also gets poisoned attacks. This one, while being a dual kit with the War Hydra, is actually better against other tough, highly armoured models, because it's got that high strength of 7, which gives it good armour penetration. The thing with the Feast of Bones, though, can be swingy, because you've got to get all 5 dice to hit on a 3+. But if it does pop off, you're going to do another D6 strength 7 hits. That could be incredibly nasty. So I think the War Hydra has more value in my local meta, where it's a lot more large infantry. But against big units, the Charybdis could be quite cool. And it certainly wouldn't be uncommon to see at least one in an army list. Given it's a cool looking model with that sort of that good sea monster vibe on it. So yeah, I mean, it definitely has its uses, though. Say in the meta at the time, with the lack of large units, the War Hydra's probably got more utility. But say if you did pop off with the hits on this one, you could do some big damage to some big models, some very high toughness, high armored models. So last up, we have the Sisters of Slaughter. So this is the last of the rare units in the list. Now these guys are totally different to what you might know if you play Age of Sigmar. So this was a rare unit. They have above average weapon skill. which was 6, if I remember correctly. They had good initiative, attacks, and leadership as well. Their equipment was a hand weapon and a shield. And they have a unit size of 10. They do get a full set of command with a standard bearer, champion, and a musician. Now, their rules. Right, they get the basic rules. So they get always strikes first. They get the murderous prowess, which is the reroll wound rolls of 1 in close combat. But they get Dance of Death, which is a 4+ wood save in close combat. And one enemy unit in base contact loses its rank bonus and cannot parry, which is absolutely fantastic. Makes them tough and a good chance of winning a combat, taking away some of those rank bonuses, which is key. They also get Trial of Blades, so they get +1 to hit and wound if at least one model in the enemy unit has a higher weapon skill and or strength. So they can be vulnerable to shooting because they only have got the shield. They can be very durable in close combat with that 4+ ward save. And they're great against enemy infantry units, particularly if that infantry unit's got an embedded character. Because if that character's got a higher weapon skill or strength, then they get the whole unit gets that bonus against that enemy unit. So if you're looking for a pretty tough character like a vampire, for example, protected by a unit of skeletons, it's a great target for these guys. They relatively common sight on the tabletop, at least one unit. Same points cost as Blackguard, though the one thing is, a bit like the Witch Elves, there is a dual kit with the Witch Elves. You can see the similarity of the poses, but with those whips as well. On small bases, they were a real pain to rank up. So, magnetized movement trays were definitely good to stop them falling over. And with maybe some slightly bigger bases will help with the ranking up of these more dynamic models. But definitely cool all the same. It'll be interesting to see how these go forward because they've taken on a very different role in Age of Sigmar. So it'll be interesting to see how Games Workshop views the Sisters of Slaughter. Will they be looking at them in an 8th edition context or in a more modern context where they're a bit more line infantry? We will see. And we'll see how long it takes to get there, but we'll see what these guys look like in the future. That brings us to the end of the rare units. There's still 2 episodes to go in our faction focus, so tune back in for those. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, though, give it a thumbs down. Let me know why in the comments down below. And as always, if you want to see more content, please do hit that subscribe button. It does mean such a huge amount for me, and it's free for you to do, so thank you for that in advance. You've been watching The Ghost Owl, and I'll see you very soon.